Most people don't see others as they are. They see what they want to see. In relationships, this becomes even more obvious. A woman meets a man. She doesn't just see him. She sees traits, patterns, hints, pieces she fills in with her own ideas. He's quiet. Maybe he's deep. He's ambitious. He must be going places. He's emotionally distant. She assumes he just needs time. Little by little, she builds an image of him, not based on what he's shown, but based on what she believes he could be. This is called projection. In psychology, projection is when someone places their own ideas, feelings, or expectations onto someone else. It's not always intentional. Often it happens so subtly that neither person even realizes it. It works both ways. Men do it, women do it. But in romantic settings, the way women project onto men can take a unique form. It's not about who he is right now. It's about who she thinks he might become. She sees a man with potential. Maybe he's struggling, maybe he's inconsistent, but she looks past all that, thinking it's temporary. She doesn't fall for him. Not really. She falls for a version of him that exists only in her imagination. This version is cleaner, more stable, more mature. He listens more. He opens up. He commits. She believes she's just being patient, supportive, loyal. But in reality, she's invested in someone who hasn't arrived and might never. This isn't rare, it's everywhere. A woman starts dating a guy who's emotionally unavailable, thinking she'll be the one to change him. Another chooses someone who lacks direction, convinced he'll find purpose once she's in his life. A third sticks around after betrayal, telling herself it was a one-time mistake, because the man she sees in her mind wouldn't do it again. These aren't lies. These are hopes. And projection feeds on hope. It's how people avoid disappointment. They ignore the evidence in front of them and choose a different reality. One that feels better. One that fits their narrative. Men experience this too. A man might date a woman who's emotionally distant, believing she's just guarded. He might chase a woman who's not interested, thinking she's just afraid of love. But generally, the female version of projection centers on fixing, building, and helping someone grow into something more. And this is where things begin to fall apart. Because the man she's with starts feeling pressure. He doesn't know why. She says she loves him, but he can sense the gap between how she treats him and who he really is. He feels like a project. She feels let down. Neither can explain what's wrong. It's not about love. It's about illusion. She didn't fall for him. She fell for who he could be, if only he changed just a little more. But most people don't change that much, not without years of work, and not just because someone believes in them. When the version in her head starts to crack, she feels betrayed. But it wasn't betrayal. It was just reality breaking through. For most of history, stories about love have followed a certain pattern. A man appears, quiet, confident, maybe misunderstood. He says little but suggests a lot. He carries pain but also purpose. He pushes others away, yet makes an exception for her. At first he seems distant, then slowly, piece by piece, he opens up. And by the end, he's transformed. Not by his own decision, but because she stayed, waited, believed. This idea didn't come from nowhere. It was shaped by novels, films, and characters written over centuries. Mr. Darcy, Edward Cullen, Christian Grey. Men who are cold, closed off, or even emotionally unavailable, but still end up as romantic heroes. Their silence is seen as depth. Their rejection is misread as resistance. Their flaws don't disqualify them, they make them interesting. The story is always the same. He's tough to reach, but worth it. He doesn't say much, but he means well. He's broken, but she can help him heal. This becomes the pattern, and many women, influenced by these ideas, search not for a man who's ready, but a man who might become ready. The traits are repeated often. He's driven but calm, strong but kind, in control but not controlling, mysterious but honest, independent but still needs her. And even if he isn't those things yet, there's this belief that he could be, that somewhere underneath the problems is the version that fits, and that's where it starts, the expectation of potential. She doesn't just look for compatibility, she looks for signs, hints, small details that suggest who he could turn into. She meets a man with ambition, even if it's not focused. She sees charm, even if it's inconsistent. She notices effort, even if it's short-lived, and based on that, she builds the rest in her mind. This is called potential dating, choosing someone not for who they are now, but for who they might grow into. It's common and often mistaken for patience or loyalty. But in truth, it creates a gap, a distance between reality and what's imagined. Because when a woman dates potential, she's not in a relationship with a person. She's in a relationship with an outcome, one that hasn't happened, one that might never happen. And when time passes and that change doesn't come, frustration builds. She sees it as failure, as wasted time, as betrayal. But the man never made those promises. He just was who he was. She connected the rest. She filled in the blanks. This happens quietly, slowly, without many noticing. A man gets picked not because he's the right fit, but because he seems close enough to fix, close enough to mold, close enough to one day become what she pictured. And it's not just personal, it's cultural. From childhood, the message is clear. Love is about holding on, believing, waiting. That men are complicated puzzles. That women are meant to understand them. That being the one who sees his potential is a strength. But in practice, it's something else. It becomes investment in a fantasy. Attention given to a version of someone that only exists in theory. The man doesn't know this version. He can't live up to it. He's expected to change without being asked directly. He feels judged for things he never agreed to, and this is where many relationships break. Not from betrayal, not from lies, but from expectations built on imagined futures. Futures that were never real to begin with. In biology, there's a basic rule. The one who invests more in reproduction becomes more selective. For humans, that's women. Pregnancy, childbirth, and raising children require time, energy, and safety. These aren't minor costs. They demand protection, stability, support. Because of this, women developed certain instincts, not consciously, but over time, through evolution. They look for signs that a man can provide, not just with money, but with reliability, safety, presence. They aren't only reacting to what's in front of them, they're scanning for what might come later. A man who's strong now but careless, that's a risk. A man who's still finding his way, but shows consistency, that's a possible investment. And so patterns form. Women learn to look ahead, not at who the man is, but who he may become. This was useful for survival. It helped ensure their children were protected, fed, and given a chance. But that same instinct can misfire in modern life. In a world where survival is less about danger and more about emotional balance, those old filters still operate. A woman sees a man struggling, but trying. She sees someone unsteady, but capable. And that built-in mechanism kicks in, the same one built to look for potential. It's not just nature, though. Culture plays a role, too. From a young age, women are told stories. In books, in shows, in songs. The same pattern repeats. There's always a man who's broken, distant, damaged, and always a woman who reaches him, who waits, who fixes, who loves him into change. The message is clear. If you're patient enough, if you give enough, if you see what no one else sees, he'll transform. And that's called love. It becomes a script, not something spoken, but something learned. She learns that love is work, that the man you want isn't ready when you meet him. He becomes the right one because you stay long enough to help him grow. Even in casual conversation, it shows. Phrases like, he's a work in progress, or he just needs the right woman, are common. No one questions them. They sound normal, but they carry a heavy idea that love is about endurance, that emotional labor is part of the job, and so she doesn't see the man. She sees his future, his imagined version, one shaped by biology and fed by story. That imagined version isn't built from nothing. It serves a purpose. It gives structure to confusion. It brings certainty in chaos. When a man says one thing but does another, the illusion helps it make sense. When his actions don't match his words, the version she created fills in the gaps. This isn't weakness, it's function. It protects from uncertainty. It creates direction. And in many cases, it feels like hope. But the cost is high, because it's not based on truth. It's based on desire. Some women become emotional visionaries. They don't just feel, they plan. They organize futures around what they believe the man will become. They adjust, forgive, wait. not because of what he's shown, but because of what they imagine is coming. This brings a kind of comfort. It gives meaning to the waiting. It justifies the work. If he changes, it was worth it. If he doesn't, then maybe she gave up too soon. Either way, the fantasy delays the need to decide. But over time, the illusion starts to break. Not through drama, but through repetition. Promises are made and not kept. Patterns repeat. And the vision she built no longer fits what she's experiencing. Still, many hold on. Not because they're blind, but because letting go of the vision means admitting it never existed. The illusion was never about deception. It was about survival, about stories, about structure. And when that illusion fades, what's left is just the person. Stripped of potential, stripped of meaning, just real. And for many, that's the hardest part. Not because the man changed, but because the version in her mind never existed at all. A man meets a woman. He puts his best self forward. He listens more than usual. He watches his words. He tries to seem put together. It's not fake, but it's not complete either. It's a version of himself that fits the moment. He's not lying. He's presenting. Like a job interview. She watches. She listens. She connects pieces. She sees effort. She notices composure. She fills in what's missing with traits she hopes are there. Stability, depth, strength. He's not saying he has these traits. She's not asking directly. But between his silence and her assumptions, something new forms. Neither one notices what's happening. He's trying to impress. She's trying to understand. But they aren't dealing with each other. They're dealing with impressions, masks and mirrors. He shows a filtered self. She reflects her idea of who that self could be. Weeks pass, maybe months. The version she built starts to guide her choices. She gives more. She adjusts her schedule. She opens up. She believes he's worth it. She believes he's close to being what she imagined. He senses her investment but doesn't fully understand it. Over time, small cracks appear. He forgets plans. He avoids questions. He pulls back in ways she didn't expect. Still, she explains it away. Maybe he's stressed. Maybe it's a bad week. Maybe he just doesn't know how to express himself. She doesn't step back. She steps in deeper. Then something shifts. Maybe there's a fight. Maybe something serious happens. He reacts, and it catches her off guard. The calm man becomes defensive. The thoughtful man shuts down. The patient man gets irritated. It's fast. And now she sees something that doesn't fit. She tries to make sense of it. She replays moments. She asks herself where this side came from. She thinks, he changed. But he didn't. He just stopped performing. Or maybe he never had to in the first place. He got comfortable. He showed more of himself. And that version didn't match the one she believed in. At the same time, he's confused too. He feels judged. He hears complaints about things he never promised. He doesn't understand why she's disappointed. He says, I've always been this way. And he's right. But it's not who she thought he was. This is the disconnect. She feels misled. He feels misunderstood. And both are reacting to a gap that neither one created on purpose. He wore a mask. She filled in the blanks. The rest was automatic. The mask was simple. Be polite, be cool, don't say too much, don't ask for too much. And over time, it shaped how she saw him. She projected consistency where there was routine. She saw confidence where there was quiet. She imagined potential where there was neutrality. But life doesn't keep the mask on. Stress strips it off. Conflict removes it. Vulnerability breaks it. And when those moments come, the truth shows up. Not in words, but in reactions. That's when the illusion breaks. When she asks, how could I not see this? But the signs were always there. They just didn't match the picture she was building. The mind protects what it believes. And when evidence threatens that belief, it gets filtered or ignored. This is called cognitive dissonance. It's the mental discomfort of holding two ideas that don't match. In this case, I thought he was this kind of person, and he's not acting like that person. To solve it, the brain starts adjusting. She might blame herself, she might blame him, she might double down on the fantasy or walk away from it completely. But either way, the illusion can't hold. Because the real man, the one with habits, fears, patterns, has stepped forward. And now, for the first time, she's not looking at what she imagined. She's looking at what's real. She tells her friend it ended suddenly, that it made no sense, that he just changed. He was so present in the beginning. He said the right things. He did what most don't. She believed he was different. But slowly, things slipped. The small actions stopped. The texts got shorter. The plans felt last minute. She tried to hold on, but it didn't work. He tells his friend he doesn't understand what went wrong. He was just being himself. He never said he was perfect. He showed up when he could. He cared. But she kept asking for more time, more attention, more effort. He says she expected him to become someone he never claimed to be. They both walk away from the same relationship, but they leave with completely different versions of what happened. She says he misled her, that he made her believe in something serious, that he pulled her in only to let go. She points to what he did at the start, the conversations, the consistency, the promises. To her, that was real. What came later felt like a betrayal. He says she projected things onto him, that she wanted something that wasn't there, that he was just being open, not making a commitment. He says she built the future in her mind and blamed him when it didn't happen. Neither one is lying. They just experienced two different relationships, one imagined, one lived. This is common. The beginning feels clear. The other person looks right, talks right, acts right, and slowly, that picture locks in. The brain connects the rest. It assumes the future will match the start. But when it doesn't, the story breaks. And when the story breaks, people blame each other. Some women feel tricked. They say he acted like he wanted something serious. He gave effort early, then changed. To them, it looks like manipulation, a setup, a performance. Some men feel cornered. They say they never said they were ready. They were just figuring things out. They feel like they were held to promises they never made. To them, it feels like pressure, like they were judged for not becoming someone else's vision. Arguments begin, texts get analyzed, friends take sides. One says it was dishonesty. The other says it was fantasy. And both think they're right. The truth is harder to accept. No one lied. But no one was clear either. Both people believed in something that wasn't tested. The version she loved wasn't him. It was her idea of him. The version he felt pressured by wasn't her. It was her expectations. This happens more than people admit. And most of the time, there's no clear villain. Just two people reacting to different expectations, shaped by early signals and unspoken assumptions. She says, but he acted like he cared. And maybe he did, just not in the way she thought, not in the way she needed. He says, I was honest, and maybe he was. But she didn't fall in love with what he said. She fell in love with what she thought it meant. It's not about lies. It's about gaps. Small ones at first, between who someone is and who we think they are. Then wider, between what's happening and what we want to happen. And by the time the relationship ends, the distance is too big to ignore. Philosopher Alain de Botton once said, no one falls in love with a person. They fall in love with their story of that person. And that's the problem. The relationship isn't with the man. It's with the idea of the man. The imagined version. The future version. The version shaped by hope, habit, and need. That version doesn't argue. It doesn't disappoint. It doesn't hesitate. But it's also not real. The real version, the one with flaws, delays, distractions, is who shows up in time. And by then, for many people, it's too late. The breakup isn't caused by a single event. It's caused by misalignment. A slow drift from what was expected to what actually exists. And when that shift becomes clear, the fallout begins. A woman meets a man. She listens to how he speaks, what he chooses to share, and what he avoids. She builds an image in her mind, not out of nothing, but out of moments, signals, traits. She doesn't see him as he is. She sees something else, something bigger, something cleaner, less flawed, more whole. Plato had a name for this. He called it the theory of forms. He believed that everything we interact with in the world is a reflection of a perfect version, a form that exists only in the mind. A table isn't just a table. It's a shadow of the ideal table. A tree isn't just a tree. It's a version of the ideal tree. Applied to people, this changes everything. When a woman meets a man, she may not fall for the actual man. She might fall for the form, the idea of what a man should be. Kind, strong, intelligent, emotionally aware. She then takes pieces from the man in front of her and links them to the ideal. She ignores what doesn't match, she amplifies what does, and the image takes over. But Plato also said something else. These forms, as perfect as they are, aren't real. They exist only in the realm of thought. So when someone falls in love with the form of a person, they aren't engaging with the real world. They're living in the mind. And that means what they feel isn't grounded in reality. It's grounded in imagination. Philosophers later looked at this from different angles. Simone de Beauvoir said that love often turns people into roles, not full humans, but characters in someone else's story. She called it the other. A woman might not see a man as an equal subject, someone with his own complexity, contradictions, and autonomy. She might see him as a part in her script, a figure who supports her own vision of life. She doesn't do this consciously. It's learned. From childhood stories, from films, from the way culture speaks about romance. She sees the distant man as mysterious, the quiet man as deep, the indecisive man as sensitive, and each assumption builds the image. But in doing this, love stops being mutual. It becomes self-referential. She's not relating to him. She's relating to what he represents. He becomes a symbol, a placeholder, an object. Beauvoir warned about this. She said real love requires seeing the other person as fully separate from yourself, with needs you don't control, with thoughts you may never fully understand. But that kind of love is hard. It doesn't feel stable. It doesn't satisfy fantasy. It demands presence, not projection. So instead, many people choose the illusion, not because they want to lie, but because the truth is harder to work with. Other traditions went deeper. In Buddhist philosophy, all suffering is tied to attachment, not just to people, but to expectations, identities, outcomes. When someone clings to a version of another person, they're not in love. They're stuck. Buddhism says that the mind creates illusions, then becomes dependent on them. It holds on to ideas and resists when reality doesn't match. That resistance creates pain, disappointment, anger, confusion. In relationships, this is everywhere. A woman meets a man and clings to what he could be, not what he is. She holds that image tightly. She gives, waits, adjusts. When he doesn't change, she feels betrayed. But the betrayal wasn't from him. It was from the mind that refused to let go of the idea. Non-attachment doesn't mean apathy. It doesn't mean ignoring people. It means seeing them as they are, without the fantasy, without the story, without the hope that they'll fulfill a need you haven't faced. Letting go of the idea of the perfect man doesn't mean settling. It means recognizing that love isn't about completion. It's about understanding. Not building someone in your image, but meeting them in theirs. Plato described the mind's pull toward the ideal. Beauvoir explained how we turn people into roles. Buddhism offered a way out. Together, they point to one conclusion. If you want to love clearly, you have to let go of the story. Because until then, it's not the man you love. It's the version you built. And the longer you hold on to that version, the less space there is for what's real. She meets someone new. This time, she pauses. She watches, listens, notices. She doesn't build a future in her mind. She doesn't assume what comes next. She waits to see what's real, and that small decision, not to imagine, not to construct, changes everything. Most people never question what they're doing when they fall for someone. They assume it's automatic, a feeling, a connection. But often, what they call love is projection. Their own thoughts, hopes, and history painted onto another person. Recognizing that is the first shift. Awareness doesn't fix everything, but it changes the path. Instead of asking, how can I make this work? It becomes, what am I actually seeing? Red flags don't feel like failures or challenges. They just become facts, patterns, signs, not to fix, but to understand. A man who avoids questions early on isn't being mysterious. He's avoiding. A man who jokes at serious moments isn't being charming. He's dodging. These aren't puzzles to decode. They're answers. When you stop filling in the blanks, what's already there becomes enough. But it's not just about spotting red flags. It's about seeing clearly across the board. When he's kind, it's not proof of future loyalty. When he's consistent, it doesn't mean he'll never change. Every action is just that. One action. not a full blueprint, not a prophecy. This clarity applies both ways. Men too often walk into relationships with masks. They say what they think they should say, do what gets the best response. They avoid vulnerability, hoping to buy time, hoping effort can replace honesty. But pretending leads to problems. If you build a connection on filtered versions of yourself, you can't maintain it without effort. And when the mask drops, which it always does, disappointment follows. Not because you failed, but because the relationship was never grounded in who you were to begin with. Letting go of the mask takes risk. It means showing parts you'd rather hide. It means saying, "This is where I'm at." Not where you could be, not where you want to be, just what is. And that's what real love needs, not more charm, not more stories, vision, real unfiltered vision. Seeing the other person for who they are, with all the delays, the mess, the pauses, and choosing based on that, not on what might change, not on potential. But even with awareness and honesty, none of this holds unless people know how to look inward. That means noticing when you're escaping, when you're attaching too quickly, when you're chasing a story, not a person. It means asking, why do I need this to work, instead of how can I make this last? Emotional self-awareness isn't a trait you're born with. It's something you build through silence, through patterns, through reflection, through conversations that don't end with blame but with understanding. If women can notice when they're projecting, they stop trying to mold. They start to accept or walk away. If men can drop the need to perform, they stop getting stuck in unsustainable roles. They start leading with clarity. And when both people do this, really do this, what's left isn't fantasy. It's something more grounded, maybe smaller, less intense, less dramatic, but more honest. That kind of connection doesn't guarantee success, but it removes the confusion, the shock, the betrayal that wasn't betrayal, the blame that was just misunderstanding. Most relationships don't fail because of deception. They fail because two people were never relating to each other, only to their own ideas, their own hopes, their own edits of the truth. What can be done is simple. See what's in front of you. Speak what's inside you. Don't cling to a version. Don't play a part. Because the only thing more dangerous than losing love is never knowing if it was real in the first place. What if the man she loved never really existed? We don't fall in love with people. We fall in love with our version of them. And until we can see through that story, we will always be chasing ghosts. Thank you for following us on this journey. Do well to like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like this kind of content. Thank you, and stay tuned for more educational and informative contents.